gaps in performance, unmet expectations. As leaders, we want ourselves, our teams, and individuals to understand our highest priorities and perform. Clarify communications, light the torch, move your organization or body of people to be inspired. Create triggers to exceed individual and organizational expectations. Here, we learn how to hit bullseyes on our performance targets.
The sincerity with which opportunity to transform your life exists. Because the operating system that you have that got you where you are is the same operating system that can get you where you want to go, to the extent we understand how it works. It's the same tools, it's the same mechanisms, right? And because of my own life journey being really frustrated, I'm hitting this goal. Oftentimes the motivation was to please somebody else, to show somebody else. It wasn't internal, and that's frustration, right? Head and heart weren't aligned. So the top part of your brain, the cortex, is the 5% of conscious activity. There are hundreds of thousands of neurons firing as we speak. As a matter of fact, there's enough neurons in your head to go from New York to London, if you were to stack them side by side, as unbelievable as that is. And when I have a thought, when learning comes, your neurons connect, synaptic connections. And the more frequently I have a similar thought, the neurons build a community. And in the back of our minds right now, you have communities of thoughts, of history, of memory. Now, an example of that is somebody learned a language in here that they forgot. I used to speak such and such, but now I no longer speak it. Does that happen to anybody? Yes. Oh, all right. So what happens is when I'm speaking the language, I'm continuing to fire the neural connections, right? The neurons are staying connected. They're lighting up in the brain because I'm tapping into it. Then that's going back into memory, right? Now, once I stop making those connections and I focus on something else, those older connections start to break apart. They go away. And there's this cerebral glue that happens to the new connections that keeps those community formed. So somebody says, well, I always forget those things. It's the way the brain works. So it's firing consistently in the brain the things you want to have happen. It's deliberate. Now, it's not just positive thinking, because what happens here is if you take that frontal lobe and you come down to the center part called the midbrain, that's your feelings. Now, has anybody ever said, I feel like crap today? Okay. So what that does is when the brain takes that in, I feel like crap today, it sends these peptides down to the body, and you'll feel something in your stomach, you feel something in your back, and what that does is it reinforces the feeling. And when the feeling gets reinforced, it goes back to the brain. I feel like crap today. And those neurons connect, and they fire, and they connect, and they fire. So because there's only so much room in the conscious mind, then those feelings go back into memory, your subconscious mind, in what's called the cerebellum. If I'm not deliberate and consistent and conscious about where I put my focus, I'll continue to get what I've been getting, because the pathways are built. It's like laying tar on a road. We just keep laying tar, laying tar, laying tar, laying tar, laying tar, laying tar. So if I'm not getting the relationship outcome I want, if I have a specific thing in my mind that's not working for me, the way I think about it, the way I talk about it, the way I address it creates the connections. It makes it stronger. It releases peptides into my body. I feel it in my emotions. And all of that then goes back to memory. So it's like being a hamster on a flywheel. But the good news about that is it can be switched, but it has to be deliberate.